All right, the point of this video is to help you to understand that whether you are aware or not, even when the screen on your smartphone is black and apparently it's doing nothing, in other words, you're not interacting with it in any way, you're not making a phone call, you're not receiving a text message, you're not looking at your social media. Did you know that over and over and over again throughout the day and the night, if you have it turned on during the night, you and your loved ones are being bathed in copious amounts of radio frequency radiation? So we're going to use a data logging setup to reveal that. This video has two parts. We're in the studio right now, and we're going to go out in the field for the next part, and then we're going to return to the studio. So stay tuned.
Hi, this is Keith Cutter with EMFRemedy.com. We're going to have a little bit of fun today. We're going to look at what your cell phone, what your smartphone is doing when you might not even be aware that it's doing anything. So we have quite a setup. For right now, let's ignore these 2 meters over here, the yellow one and the black one, and we'll just focus our attention on the smartphone and the Safe and Sound Pro 2. So this is a radio frequency or an RF meter, and when I switch this on, you'll be able to hear I have this meter hooked up to an audio recorder so I can show you what it sounds like. And if you listen very carefully, you can hear the characteristic sound of being in an area that has cell phone service. I want you to notice, though, that the RF level, and let me go handheld a bit with the camera. Sorry, it's going to be a bit shaky, but I want to show you the actual levels here. So the maximum level is 0.86. So that's less than 1 microwatt per square meter. And that's a relatively low reading by most standards. So we are in a rural area here, and yet we have cell phone service, so you can hear, if you listen carefully, what that sounds to have cell phone service. In a moment, it won't be subtle. You won't have to strain your hearing to be able to hear what the RF sounds like coming out of the smartphone. And I'll again go handheld with the camera and show you how the display changes and the numbers increase. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how we can do a long-term study. And I want to share the results of that with you, because that's really what I'm trying to get at here, is how very active your smartphone can be, even though you might not be aware of it. So let's go ahead and we're going to take this phone and we're going to force it to communicate with the tower. And make sure there we go. We're going to force it to communicate with the tower. How do we do that? We put it in airplane mode. And when you put it in airplane mode, it has a brief conversation with the tower. So we got a reading there of 1.78 million microwatts per square meter. And you could probably hear what it sounded like, the audio signature, if you will, when we did that. Now, when I take it out of airplane mode, you're going to hear even more RF activity. So take a listen here. What happens when you take your phone out of airplane mode? Let me reset this meter. So we're back down below 0. Right now it is searching for a tower. Oh, it's found the tower. Okay, so we have 187,000 microwatts per square meter recorded from that. That's the point of having the audio portion of the analysis going on. So let's move away from the Safe and Sound Pro right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a data log. This is a more complex HF 59B from Gigahertz Solutions, and it will give us insight into what's going on in the RF realm, just like the Safe and Sound Pro did, only we can also record what's going on with a combination of this picking up the signal from the smartphone. This is the omnidirectional antenna option. And then this over here is called the NFA 1000. And if you've seen one of these in action before, most likely it's been used for magnetic field assessment or electric field assessment. Today, we're going to use it as a data log because it does have that capability as well. So first I'm going to turn on the HF59B, and then I'm going to turn this into data log mode. So what this is showing us right now is that we have 1 day and 13 hours of power left to do our data recording. The name of the file is going to be L131, and we're 24 seconds into this recording. And it just keeps showing that over and over and over again. So I have already done a a little bit over 2 hour recording using this setup. And what I want to do now is go into the studio and I want to share the results of that with you.
All right, so here we are back in the studio. I mentioned, and it says on this slide, 2+ hours. I think it's actually just shy of 2 hours of recording. The smartphone that we used it has no LTE internet service active. So really it's only able in the mode that it's in to do voice and text capabilities. No social media applications are installed. It's received no text messages during the recording period. It's received no phone calls during the recording period. There is no Wi-Fi enabled in the device. There is no Bluetooth enabled in the device. What you're seeing is the RF radiation activity of just being turned on and ready to receive text or phone calls. Also, a quick note, this is a demonstration setup like I've done in some other videos. This is not the way I would go and collect data. I would orient the various pieces a little bit differently if I were trying to get very accurate RF exposure levels. What I'm trying to show you is the rough intensity of exposure and, more importantly, the frequency. You know, it's emitting RF radiation continuously, even when you might not be expecting it. So here is what the log shows. Now, on the right-hand side here, we see the activity of the peaks of the RF radiation. Those should be down around 0 or down around 1 microwatt per square meter. If you look very closely, there are at least 15 separate periods of activity during the 2-hour exposure. So over and over and over again, you and your loved ones are being bathed in RF radiation anytime your phone is not on airplane mode. So modern smartphones emit extreme levels of RF radiation, even when it appears that nothing is happening. Now, your personal exposure, likely much higher if you use your phone in 4G LTE or 5G mode. You have any social media applications or any other type of application that does push notifications. You use Bluetooth or you use Wi-Fi. I think most people do all 5 of those things. So anyway, if I were to reproduce this setup and change any of those variables, the likelihood is it would be much more frequency of exposure. You would have much more communication with the tower. And one other thing, as you noticed, the tower far away, you could barely hear. And the level of RF radiation from the tower doesn't change. So it was less than 1 microwatt per square meter, and the much greater radiation exposure was from the smartphone, around 3 million in the data capture period. All right, so data logging showed that extreme level RF radiation appears even when the phone appears to be inactive. Keith Cutter, EMFRemedy.com. See you next time.